Right, hello and welcome to the Christ Central Morning Devotional. I'm Alistair Semple. I'm one of the people who's in the group here. And we are drawing towards the end of our study through the book of Mark. And this morning, I have the privilege of talking about Jesus, who is still on the cross at this part in Mark where we see him. I will put the scriptures up and then we will talk through. And I think it goes one. Light will come back. And so here we are, Mark 15. At noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 p.m, a detail that Matthew, Mark and Luke all make reference to. And at 3 p.m, Jesus cried out in a loud voice, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing near heard this, they said, listen, he's calling Elijah. Someone ran and filled a sponge with wine and vinegar, put it on a staff, offered it to Jesus to drink. Now leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to take him down, he said. Vinegar? Well, it was used as a way of, in the same way that we might use smelling salts today. It sort of makes a person focus. It brings them back into a sense of being present. Jesus, who had been on the cross for some time by this time, could have been thought to be in the throes of just agony. He's been, if you haven't been with us yesterday to see the people who were mocking him, insulting him, including others who were crucified either side of him, he's already been through that. And there may have been a thought that perhaps he was raving, this will bring him back. Let's see. Elijah in the Old Testament was not only a key prophet and seen as essentially one of the big players in prophecy in the Old Testament, but he didn't die. He was carried into heaven on a flaming chariot. That's the way it was described. And a reputation had built up that Elijah could come out of heaven in the same way that he went into it. And he could, at particular points of difficulty, rescue the righteous. So you're seeing a reference to that sort of belief, even while Jesus is being crucified. The words, Eloi, Eloi, lema sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me, would appear to be deliberate from Jesus. They are the opening verses of Psalm 22. It's worth reading the whole of Psalm 22, but I've just pulled out one small section of it. And this is what Psalm 22 is, which was later reckoned, therefore, to be a messianic psalm. But I'm a worm, I'm not a man. I'm scorned by everyone, despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They hurl insults, shaking their head. He trusts in the Lord, they say. Let the Lord rescue him. Let him deliver him, since he delights in him. For those people who would have been familiar with the Psalms, and that would have put a lot of people around him at the time, they would have known this reference and the other references there are in the same psalm. Jesus is saying something even in his state of agony, and it is a state of agony, that would have pointed people to prophecy, to God's word, to here is what is going on here. Do read Psalm 22 before we get to Christmas. I think you'll find yourself encouraged by this. I know we've got other things that we can read because we're doing other devotionals as well, but Psalm 22, well worth the 5 minutes that it would take you to read. Back into Mark. Elijah doesn't come. With a loud cry, Jesus breathed his last. The curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. And when the centurion who stood there in front of Jesus saw how he died, he said, surely this man was the Son of God. Huge things going on, cosmic things going on. Two elements out of this, just in passing, worth focusing on for a moment. The curtains in the temple, there were two. One of them was between the Holy of Holies and the outer part of the temple. And the only person that ever got to go through that particular temple was the high priest. And on the Day of Atonement, once a year, it was a temple that was a curtain that didn't move. And there was one which actually separated the inner part of the temple from the outer part of the temple. It was a thing which kept the place between the court of the Gentiles and the place where only the people of God were allowed separate. What this doesn't tell us is which curtain was torn. And there are all sorts of questions and suggestions that it's one or the other. And actually, it doesn't much matter. Either one is incredible. Either one is with real interest. Whether it was the opening of the Holy of Holies, so the presence of God was now available in a way that had never been before, well, that would be one thing and amazing. Or whether it was a separation between the people of God, the Jews, and the Gentiles who were kept outside, so that two could be one, that would also be amazing. And the fact is that either and both are true. And it would seem that the writer chose not to point us in one direction or the other, and maybe deliberately. It's just one of these things that you can puzzle about if you like. Both fascinating, both worth entertaining. And this, I feel, is almost a deliberate thing to get us thinking about both. Mm-hmm. And this centurion, a Roman, who stood there in front of Jesus, saw how he died and said, surely this man was the Son of God. The way that these words were later interpreted was that he may have been the very first Gentile convert who suddenly recognized that he was in the presence of divinity. Now, I think that's reading a huge amount into it. Typically important people, both in the Jewish idea of prophets or in the Gentile ideas of people touched by the gods, were reckoned to be, in general terms, sons of God. All you can say is that the Greek in this was very clearly singular and very clearly talking about the Son of God. And if it is, it's remarkable revelation. And again, another thing to puzzle about. And actually, in either event, whether that was on his heart and mind or whether the more general sense was, doesn't really much matter. He saw something which spoke to him of the divine rather than the execution of a criminal and troublemaker. Final section of Mark, and then with this I finish. Some women were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James the younger, and of Joseph and Salome. In Galilee, these women had followed him and cared for his needs. Many other women who had come up with him to Jerusalem were also there. We've been reading, as we've gone through the Last Supper, the Garden of Gethsemane, the arrest and betrayal of Jesus, that Jesus said, the shepherd will be struck, the sheep will scatter, you're all going to leave me. And that's been true. The only male disciple that we have any evidence who is present in the crowd at this was John, who is sometimes sort of thought of as the beloved disciple, the writer of John's Gospel, the writer of Revelation. But there were many disciples around him. These were the women. Doesn't mention it here, but his mother also was there watching, one of that crowd. Jesus was not alone on the cross. Some of his people who were most devoted were there around him, seeing the horror, the terror, the pain, all of that, but also supporting, doing what they could. The men had scattered, the women were present. The men get to do often in the Bible the important things, whereas the women get to do everything. And with that thought, I think it'd be good to come to prayer.